Okay, we had talked when we first got in about the new Lightroom local adjustment. I'm not terribly excited about it. Mostly it seems to me that it's simply a matter to try and make it easier for lazy people and we'll just get them lost. So what it basically allowing you to use Lightroom as if it were a bridge, so you can put anything anywhere and hopefully find it. And then after you worked on it, you can put it anywhere else that you want to and hopefully remember where it is without the need to have catalogs or directories. It doesn't have all the features that Lightroom Classic has, but also, to me, the biggest down is it doesn't have the management system, which is what I've always found to be Lightroom's most appealing attribute. So we'll talk about that from time to time and as it comes along.
That's also the thing that's confused many people is after they've moved a directory, how the heck do I get it back into Lightroom? This avoids that problem.
It does. It does, only if you can remember. Now, I have to share with you that I have finally accepted that as I've gotten older, I have had to write down passwords.
Yes.
You know, I had a request to talk about an error message screen. This message comes up sometimes when you bring a file in from another computer or another device. So what's it saying? It's telling you that the image that you've opened up is set for ProPhoto and that your working space is set for Adobe RGB. And then it asks you what you want to do. This is not an error. I mean, this is just doing exactly what it's supposed to do. So in Photoshop, under Edit, come down here, you have color settings. And the color settings brings up this screen here. And that's where you set the color space for your computer that you want to work in. I'm a proponent of ProPhoto, one, because it's the largest space it's almost the largest space we have available to us. But secondly, it's the space that Lightroom works in. And I'd rather not go around changing color spaces back and forth as I move between applications. So I have mine set that way. If you're going to work in a different color space and you bring in an image, if I were to bring in an image that one of you gave me and it was in Adobe RGB, I would get that same notice. It would say, this image is set to RGB, you're in ProPhoto, what do you want me to do? My answer to that usually is to change it over to what I'm working in and keep things at least uniform on my system. But you're free to do whatever you want. So that message coming up is not an error. It's just saying that there's a difference between what you have the computer set for and what the image that you're trying to bring in is set for. Any questions about that?
Yes, I do. And I'm glad you brought that up because I've been thinking, I work in Adobe RGB. And mainly because I wasn't sure if when I go to save something, say for competitions or to create into JPEG, is there something that does it automatically converts it to an Adobe RGB, which is what everything else wants?
Well, no, because your competition wants it to be in sRGB, which is standard. But that's not Adobe.
Yeah. Right, no, sRGB. Yes, that's what I want.
And so there is, and we will, and I'll show you how to do that tonight out of Photoshop. How's that?
Is there anything that will do it automatically, or am I going to have to? Okay.
No, easy peasy.
Good.
Take notes. Get out your notebook and take notes.
I got my notebook. I got my piece of paper, and it will go in my binder. Okay. My little cheat sheet of.
So what I guess we'll do is most of the other things that I have on my question sheet here, I'm going to show you in a couple examples that I've developed up in Photoshop. Let's start with this one. So this was a presented image of that clock in London. So this image came in, and this image came in to me as a PFD file. So I converted it first by blowing it up so the image filled the screen on my monitor and then taking a screenshot of it. And then I put it into gigapixel and made it twice as big to give me some pixels to work with. And then I brought it into Photoshop. And because I had saved it as a DNG, it put me immediately into Adobe Camera Raw. Remember, at this point, if you're using Lightroom Classic, Adobe Camera Raw is the same between both applications. That is not true if you're using Lightroom by itself, the new improved version of Lightroom. It is a smaller subset. You don't have all the controls in the Develop module or in Adobe Camera Raw in the new Develop module of Lightroom Plain. I made some adjustments to what I got. I brought the exposure down just a little bit to recover some details.
Before you go too much farther, I'm confused.
Yep.
You started with a PSD file.
Yep.
And you're in Photoshop. Why did you have to change it to something else?
It was a PSD file.
Oh, all right.
Started off as a PDF file. That's how it was shipped to me.
Okay. You said PSD, so I was confused.
You know, I'm dyslexic. I got most of the letters.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I had to convert it, and as long as I was converting, when I get something from a smartphone, as a general rule, I double it up just to give myself some more dynamic range. So I lowered the exposure a little bit. I upped the contrast a little bit. It had blown out both in the highlights and in the shadows, so I mucked around with that to try and get it up. You have the choice in here with your white balance, and there are settings. You can see what the camera would have done that you set it to something else. And oftentimes, if you're not sure, it's an interesting place to play with effects. You know, using the tungsten might be a nice way to make it into a night scene. And this is the way it came in. So it wasn't that much than to use the auto, a little bit more saturation. When you come out of Adobe Camera Raw, you have this bar here at the bottom that tells you what it's going to save it as. If you click on that, you have a chance here to change your settings. And the change that I make is right here. You can pick what it is you want it to come in as to save it automatically. So I have it saved as a Pro Photo. I have it, because it's Pro Photo, I also have it saved at 16 bits. Once you set them here, every time you do the save or the open object, this is what it's going to do it as. So that's the way to get your default. And you simply click OK, and it brings it in as a smart object. Now, that's my fallback and my safety. And what I do from here is I make a copy, and then I rasterize that copy so I have a single layer that I'm working beyond. The next thing I did is to try and figure out what was wrong with it. Why do we need to fix this? So if we go up here to 100% and look at the picture, a little wonky with the architecture. Got these really hot spots here. This blue lining here is a little strange to me, but besides the building being drunk, these people over here are in a very bright part of the picture, which is going to draw your eye, and they're also red, which is going to draw your eye, which means in a large picture or one that's a normal size, is this will have more impact and power than it probably ought to. So one way to look at that is to turn it into a black and white and once again try and mark it. So what do we see here? That the building is really off kilter. And most people will pick up on that subconsciously and know that something is wrong. And then we have these hot spots that draw people's eyes. So what do I do here? I oftentimes will make a black and white adjustment layer just so I can see it without the color interfering, and then mark it. And I mark it simply by making a color layer, putting a black mask on it, and then just painting on with white so I have a markup. So how do we fix that? One of the easiest ways to fix that is to come in here, bring over a construction arrow, a line, so we can see how much it's off. And if we go up here to edit, we can use transform, and we can use distort, and we can just simply drag the distort to straighten things up. So that's pretty straightforward. However, if you look back here on the Parliament building, it's still off. Can you see that right there?
Yeah.
And also, if we bring this guideline over here to this side of the clock tower, that side is still off. So we could continue to fiddle with that and move back and forth. Or we could make another copy of that, and we could enter it into Nick's software. So let me come back down to here. We'll use this one for this purpose. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to come up here to filter, and in your filter, you'll find the Nick's collection. If you purchase the new one, the new DxO one, it'll come in as Nick Collection 6, but it doesn't erase your old one. So your old Nick collection that you have installed now will still be there, and then you have the possibility of the new one. The new one includes perspective, and this is a very powerful tool. So it brings in your image, and it gives you the chance to set some parameters. So I want to get Big Ben straight, because it's going to have the most impact on the image. So you can collect any of these ways to do your adjustments. I'm going to click on the two parallel lines. You can bring this over, and I can bring it over to Big Ben, and it blows it up so you can see the place that you're going to draw your line on. Bring the other one over here. So that's the straight line on that side of the tower. Because of these enlarged circles right there, you're getting a real good chance to line up where your points are. And once you've got the two lined up, hit apply. And what it does then is it straightens the target, but it also straightened up the Parliament building. See it back here?
Mm-hmm.
Now it did it at an expense. It cut a little bit off on this side, and we'll see that in a few minutes. And it cut a little bit off of this side as it maneuvered it. So I'm going to cancel that. So because we put it on a working layer, it takes that layer and names it as the Nick collection. So I just renamed it as Nick Perspective. And oh, by the way, these working lines here, if you just come up here and click the move tool and grab on the line, you can just pull them off. Okay, so we've got the working down here. So if we turn this off, this is what it looked like before. And this is what it looked like now. Now, to my mind, what we lost, which is half of this light bulb here and this one tower here, that's where the line cuts through, doesn't, because it's a holiday picture, it doesn't, to me, hurt the picture at all. So I would think
you could almost crop that light that's on the right side out altogether.
You could, but you don't have to. And yes, you could. I mean, that would be, to my mind, a great solution because it doesn't add anything. The problem we have is this is still bright. We have this really bright spot here and a bright spot here. You see these three spots that are bright? And what they're going to do is they're going to draw the eye. Remember, the eye, because we have more sensors that read in black and white and sense between the things that are lightest and darkest, we're going to go to the light first, even if we're not conscious of it, even when there's color information there. The lighter part of the information is going to be what's most important to us. So we can see that. To take that a step further, so if you can see here, the white is the brightest part in what draws the eye. So the clock face, this lamp, this side of the building, up in here, and these lamps across the bridge are the brightest points in this image. Next brightest, next brightest, next brightest, and black, of course, is the darkest. So we can see that the eye is going to be drawn immediately, probably to here and then up to here. What's my solution? Well, the first thing that bothers me is this red. See that? That's just a lady there with a short jacket on. Wasn't she incredibly powerful for such a small part of the picture? So what I'm going to suggest, the first thing we do is we get rid of the red and we get rid of this kind of blue neon that's up in here. And what's the easiest way to do that? I'm going to come in here and make a new adjustment layer. That would be a hue and saturation adjustment layer. So it makes a new layer and gives us a mask. So I'm going to go onto the adjustment layer here, and the red bothers me the most. So what I'm going to do is over here where it has my defaults, and I'm going to tell it that I want to work on the color red. Now, I suppose I could try and rebuild that wall that's behind them, but that's a lot of work that someone's not going to see. I'd probably spend a couple of hours doing it. I can just take that red and I can just desaturate it. So does the red grab your eye anymore?
No.
No, not at all. So what was the next thing I said I didn't like? I didn't like this blue. So if I come back here to my hue and saturation adjustment layer, and on the master, if I go back here and do blues, I can use the same trick. I can take that blue and I can turn it to gray. So does that fluorescent blue bother you anymore? Nah. And as long as I'm in here, notice that the red on the traffic sign went away, although it wasn't as difficult. And also, the blue on the street sign went away. Are either of those two things important for the image that we're trying to save?
No.
No. So we've gotten rid of both of those. Now there might be some other adjustments in the color here.
That's what I'm just going to ask, will it affect the browns? Because browns have some red in it.
Yep, and we're going to take care of that right now because I'm really only interested in the reds of that lady's coat. I mean, that's what really bothered me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to the adjustment mask, and I'm going to hit Command or Control and the letter I, and that made it into a black mask. So the black mask covers up and hides whatever I did on the layer that it's on, right? White reveals and black conceals. So if I want to reveal something, I'm going to want to work with white. So down here in my dominoes picture, if I hit this little cross here, it'll switch it back
to white.
I'm sorry?
It converts to white.
Yeah, it moves them back and forth. Whatever's on the bottom goes to the top. Whatever goes to the top goes to the bottom. I can also hit the letter X, and that'll move them back and forth. Whatever colors you've got in here, like I said, we had blue and green. These controls do the same thing, either the letter X or this little arrow thing. So now it says I'm going to white. I'm going to paint with a white brush. I'm going to make sure that my opacity and my flow are at 100%. And then I'm going to go in here and look at what's bothering me. So I come in here. And the first thing I'm going to do is with my white brush, I'm going to make it smaller. I'm going to use the left-hand bracket key. That's next to the letter P. Make my brush smaller. And while I'm here, I'm going to undo her jacket, this little sign, that little sign there. These things here don't bother me. I'm going to paint, get rid of the blue. I'm going to come over here, take down okay, just to make sure that I was painting what I wanted to paint, because here we could see it there. I didn't see it as much. And so I put my cursor over the mask. I held down the Option key or the Alt key and clicked on it, and I can see what's going on there. And we've got this little piece here. So that's been taken care of.
Richard,
yes.
Is there some reason that you wouldn't use the clone stamp on that purple
Well, because I was there, it was just simpler.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the answer is I could, but this way, seeing how I don't care if anybody sees it, I just want to take the color out because I'd have to
Okay.
clone it from somewhere. And where would I clone it from?
Yeah, from right underneath where the purple is, you'd have to get the black
Yeah.
and run it up to the lighter gray.
And that way you wouldn't get the shadow in there. Okay, so I'm going to come back out here, go to full screen, and now nothing is drawing my eye to that side. At least the color isn't. Right?
Right.
All right, so what's the next problem?
The bright lights.
The bright lights. Well, we brought bright lights in two places. One of them was on this building here, and that's the one that actually bothers me the most.
Mhm.
So what I did is I took my color picker, which is the little eyedropper, and I grabbed a color from the Parliament building. I could have grabbed a color anywhere, but I grabbed one of these darker browns. So now I have the brown color here, right? And black. So I'm on this layer. What am I going to do? I'm going to come down here to my adjustment layer tool and click on solid color. Click on solid color. It will pick the color that's in the top box. So it'll pick that color for me. So I'm going in there right now with this color brown selected. And here I can change that color brown. I can change it by moving this dot around, or I can change it with these sliders. I can make it lighter or darker. I can change the color itself by moving with the hue. But that color that we had works okay for me. So I'm going to click OK. So now I have the whole picture covered up in brown. That's not what I want. So I'm going to click on the mask, hold down the Command or Control key and the letter I, which makes it a black mask. What do you think I'm going to do next?
Paint over it with the.
I'm going to paint over it. So I click on the mask. Now, I just hit the letter D, and that changed it to the default, which is black and white. I could have clicked here on the upper dominoes or just on the letter D, and that changed it to black and white. See how this is black, and I want to reveal the brown. What I'm going to do is paint with white. Paintbrush on the mask, and I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to paint. Notice at this point, I would flunk my crayon class because I'm not coloring within the lines. Okay, so, and I'm doing that because I'm lazy. And what I'm going to do now is click back on the color, click up here on the blend modes, and start to go down and see what's going on. And look at what's happening here. What's happening here is that if the color below is darker, it's going to imply the color. So I'm doing this here, and it's beginning to clean up those colors for me. Right there. See that, how the line's cleaned up?
Yeah.
So that's going to be my blending mode. And then I'm going to come up here to my old friend opacity. You could click on this button to get the bar back. Or you could just click on the word opacity and just slide it back and forth. So I'm going to bring the opacity down so that it looks to me like it just kind of blends in. And that's probably close enough right there. So is that not pretty clever?
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back here. So looking at it from here, didn't make a big change. It just didn't make it to be the brightest thing in the image. So the last thing that bothered me a lot is the lamps. And I picked a yellow. Now, what you can do is you can come here to a light right here. If we click in here, we can try and grab the yellow out of here. We can use our tool and pick a yellow. But you see, it's not very bright. See how it's kind of contaminated? So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to double click on this top domino. I'm going to grab that little circle and I'm going to bring it up here so I can make it a pretty bright yellow. I'm going to use the same technique I used before. I would come down here. I'm going to make a solid color adjustment layer. While I'm in here, I can say, gee, that's an awfully strong yellow. So I can come down here to the saturation and bring it down a little bit. And I can come down here to the brightness, maybe bring it down a little bit. Okay. Then I'm going to click on my mask, hit Command or Control and the letter I to inverse it. And then what I can do is I can paint with white paint on the lights that are bothering me, which is here and here and maybe in here. Come in here and make sure we're not missing much. Go back with my paintbrush again. Add a little bit more here. Then I'm going to go back to my color, come back up here to my blend modes, and I can just run my cursor down over them to see if any of them, looks to me like soft light will probably do the job. So there, click back up on this, full screen, and now I've got my lights with a little bit of yellow, so they're not just pure white. That brings them down a notch in what's drawing the eye and helps tie that part of the picture again. So looking at the picture, what is your eye drawn to first? I'm sorry?
The clock face.
The clock face. I'm also finding that when I first looked at it, this bit down here caught my attention first. It's in the foreground, it's bright, it's sparkly, and then from there I went up to the clock face. Then what does your eye do?
Goes to the lights in the tower or in the walkway.
Well, that's where I came up from. I'm going to guess that it comes down the tower, is what I think it's going to do.
Okay.
And then it's going to catch these lights, and it's going to make you a path. And that path is going to draw the light in your eyes and hold it in more. So, as a picture in your scrapbook for having gone to London, does this one work? And does this one work, excuse me, screen, any better than, remember, I'm going to hold down my alternate or option key and click on this original. So that's what it was. This is what we have. What do you think?
Like what we have compared to what we had, what we started with.
Yeah. See, because you see how your eye is drawn to those two red coats?
Mm-hmm.
But now, Big Ben is what this is about, and a scene at the water at night. These people down here don't bother me at all. I think they add scale, so I like that. And actually, the people down here don't bother me. Far less than the time I would spend trying to build all those windows.
For me, I'm not drawn even to the white up in the clock face. I'm drawn to those lights right in the center.
Right
of
here,
the
this
tower.
side. Right here?
Those
Right here.
yeah, those right there.
And that
in the
works
center of
too.
The tower. Not all the way across, just that one right in the center.
Right here.
No.
Now, if
Follow
it,
that to the tower. Follow the line to the tower.
right. And if that bothers you a lot, we could do the same technique on those, make them yellow or make them a little duller.
Yeah, because that's what draws my eye.
To me, it's all part of a festive. I mean, for me as a vacation picture, the fact that it's bright and sparkly works, because how long is someone going to look at it? If you're not judging it for a contest, you're only going to look at it for a few seconds as you pass the refrigerator door. All right. Did that work for you, Dale?
Yes. Yeah.
Good.
The only thing that I would have an issue with is I don't have the Nick family. So all I'd have would be Photoshop and their method of taking the distortion and correcting it.
And you can. It was just quicker and better with the other one.
Sure, I understand.
So that's
okay.
So that's this layer right here. And so we've got it. And we just go back up here to edit, transactions,
Transform.
and you could warping would be too much work to my mind. Is you could just use,
Perspective.
Have you
sorry?
used in Camera Raw, the geometry? Have you used that to straighten
I
things
have,
out?
I thought that this was simpler. We could
That
do it
worked
that way
great.
too.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, I have Nick, so
Yeah.
What about the perspective layer there under edit?
Okay, so we're back on this again. We go back here to edit. I can do this. Transfer.
Perspective. No, perspective. Yeah, perspective.
So what perspective basically does is tries to move it in and out. And you might be able to get it here. Actually, it doesn't look too bad. See, when I used it, it just got squat for me.
I get squished.
And I really wanted it to stay high.
HDR would do it too.
HDR?
ACR,
Again,
ACR.
Adobe
Down
Camera
on
Raw.
Camera Raw.
Oh,
with down
Camera
image.
Raw.
Yeah, it's got left and right and all these other little,
So let's click out of this, distort, and we're going to, now best practice would be to turn this into a smart layer. Why would we do that?
because then it doesn't make any changes.
Well,
You
because
can go right into
Because
Camera
we don't
Raw.
lose that. We don't
we
lose
don't
that
lose
layer.
it, and we can go back and change it again. So convert to a smart object, click here. So now it's a smart object. And then we can back up here again, filter. We're going to make it to Camera Raw. So it's going to open up. So it's going to open up the image in Camera Raw. And then we can come down here to
Geometry.
geometry.
And it's got some bars. Sometimes I play with some.
Manual.
Yeah, that, yeah.
So you can take it here
Mhm.
and see how so that's straightening up part of it. It's not correcting what we have over here, but it is correcting part of it for us.
Mhm.
I don't have a lot of,
You go to scale.
I'm sorry,
You can go to scale.
the
Scale.
scale here.
Scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not straightening the other buildings.
Well, you can go to the vertical, the squares, the upright line. And it straightens everything.
Yeah,
There
that's
you
a
go.
nice job. So like,
And you can go to scale, and if it leaves some area, then you can fill that in what is it, where?
content
Generative
aware
fill.
fill.
Content
So here, I
aware.
scaled it back down so we can keep all of this stuff here. And click OK.
You can be lazy and leave out, cut it out, or you can keep the entire image and fill it in on the sides that you lost with content aware.
So you can do it, Dale.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Something for me to play with.
Part of my job is to keep you off the streets.
And the other good thing is, if you do what Richard said, go and convert it to a smart object. If you later on see it as there's something wrong, you can go back to it and readjust it. And
so what he's saying is, see, because it's a smart object here. So I can double click down here in Camera Raw filter, and it opens right back up again for me. And
Okay.
I can continue to work on it. So that's the beauty of this, making it a smart object. That's where it becomes so incredibly powerful.
Thank you.
My pleasure. So now let's click on this. As long as we're here, let's get as much mileage out of it as we can. So if I've got this, I'm going to come up here to, the question was, why would it save it as a PDF? In my world, it's always asked me. So I'm going to come here to File. I'm going to click on Save As. If you opened it as a PDF and you just saved it, it will try and save it in the same format that you opened it in. So if you opened a PDF in Photoshop, did something to it, and then said, hit the Save button, it'll take your changes and it'll save it in whatever the format was that you opened it.
I
So
think
you'd have to
what I might have done is when I went to save as, I thought I was saving it as a
PDF.
Photoshop file.
PSD.
Instead, I saved it as a PDF.
Yeah.
I think it might have been my mistake.
Well, actually, if you look down here, there's a PDF. And there's a Photoshop RAW. So the thing here is to save it as a Photoshop file.
Yeah.
So that's probably where that happened. Cancel. Now, Donna, to your point, I've done this image now and I want to submit it to DPI-SIG. I come over here to File, and I'm going to export it. Export as. These are my choices right now, and I want to save it as a JPEG. So our standard is what, 1024?
Yeah.
So I just went down here to the height and click that in. So it made the adjustment for the width. There's the size it's going to come out as. So that's pretty much what I want. Down here, color space. Embed the color profile that I've got. Convert to an RGB, and you can see what the colors have changed as, so we can come back and fix that if it doesn't meet our fancy. Click on Export. Up here, you can change the name. So that's my DPI-SIG. I'm going to put it on the desktop, save, and it's done. I've saved it. It's now a JPEG, the correct size and the correct color space for the competition.
And if I'm not mistaken, then the sRGB setting sticks, so you don't have to do it every time.
Yeah, whatever you put in the last time is it remembers.
So, but I have to do it. I don't do a save as, because right now I do a save as. I usually change the size in Photoshop.
Well,
And then I do a save as and the JPEG.
well,
And
our save as hasn't changed. File, save as. It's still
Yeah,
the
see,
save
this is
as
where-
is a PDF that we have, a PSD that we had before.
Right, this is where I save it as the other. I'll do save a copy. Now you have to hit save a copy. If you hit save a copy, you can go and change it to a JPEG.
Yeah, well, you can
And
change
that's
this to a
usually
JPEG.
how I do it.
See, I'm here. I could change it to a JPEG here.
Yeah, that's under export. Yeah. Oh,
No, that's under Save As.
That's under
that's
the save as.
Yeah, your save as looks different than mine.
Well, I'm sorry.
Maybe because you're in Lightroom.
No, they're the same. All right,
Richard, I have another question.
sure.
Would the generative fill, would that build the peak of the tower back
No.
or not?
I don't think so.
No, okay.
And I think having the tower scrape the clouds is neat.
Yeah,
I really like that about it. I'd almost be tempted to put some fog along the that bottom walkway, personally. But I thought that was neat. But don't generative fill. It doesn't have enough information, to figure that out. I don't think.
yeah, okay. Yeah, I didn't think so.
Now, one of those new
but
AI
you can
ones bites.
try. You can always try with that one.
Yeah.
If you select yourself the triangle that you think it will be up there, you have to make the selection. And if you make the selection, then you can play with the fill, and it may or may not do it for you. But you need to save it to sort of the shape, I think. I'm not sure, but it's always try and try and try and try.
Well,
You might, what, you might need to do a Control Shift D to create a layer to work with.
I did. I put it up here and I made a stamp visible just now.
Okay. But you're not getting the generative fill.
I haven't gotten that far yet.
Yeah, Malin, you know better that stuff than I, so.
That's right. That's Malon's expertise.
Not in Photoshop.
Well, it's the same in Photoshop.
Edit. Generative fill. Give it a try.
Generate.
Just click generate.
There it is.
Yeah, let's see. What it gave us was, see, it kind of gave us one there. But that's not quite what I had in mind. So that goes back to my favorite tool over here, this history. So that's what it gave us. That's what we had. That to that. So, but you can continue to play with it. It's all evolving technology.
I like it with the clouds though, too.
I do too. I think your friends will also. File, recent.
One question, Richard.
Yes.
When you change to DNG, would it accept the noise?
I didn't try it because I looked at it and I didn't see that much noise in it.
I just saw the noise here, and that's why I.
Yeah.
You know, there's some distortion in there too.
Yeah, there is. So let me tell you the story. When my son was 5 years old, we were visiting his godfather. And Jack had a pair of wooden shoes that he had bought when he did his grand European tour between graduating from college and graduate school. And Parker played Little Dutch Boy and put on these huge wooden shoes and kind of marched around the Christmas tree at Jack's house. And Jack took a picture, and it's called Little Dutch Boy. When we were on our trip, Nathan, without having seen the picture or heard the story, bought himself a pair of wooden shoes. And when we came home, I pulled the image out of one of my drawers and showed it to him and realized that I had not taken a picture of his wooden shoes with him on in Holland, and I didn't have any pictures of him wearing his wooden shoes. So I had him bring his shoes, and while the family was doing whatever they were doing, I took a picture. So that's the image. And now the problem was trying to do something with it, because his sisters were in there raising a Mavic, and we couldn't take a picture in a nice place, and it was just a fast snapshot. So I brought it in and tried to straighten up the door frame and him. And then I used that perspective thing in Adobe Camera Raw and tried to make it so he was straight. And I played around with it, where the things didn't match up. So the next thing, because the picture of his father Was wearing a red shirt and dark trousers. So I decided to emulate that. So the first thing I did was try to bring out the reds. And I played with the colors. And I continued to try and catch the red that looked the most like what he had. And I finally got it here with a color fill. But look at the problem. What is the problem? Anybody?
No texture.
You don't, yeah, no texture.
Very sharp edges.
No sharp edges, and we had a texture problem. So I got the textures by creating a gradient map. So let's click on that. And I used a black to white so I could pick up the tones. So I used a gradient map to help allow the textures to come through. You understand how I did that?
No.
No? Okay. So I had the red. Get this back out. Got the red. Underneath the red, there's black and white, because it's down in here. We've got some texture with tones. So by making a gradient layer, click on this. So there's the red color. I click on it, and I pick a red that goes from a lighter to dark tone, still all in reds, and brought that in, and that allowed these textures to come through.
Okay.
Just by changing the tone of the red?
Yeah, what it did is looked at the layer underneath and said, is it darker or lighter underneath? That's how the gradient map works.
Ah.
So it's picking up the textures from this picture here. There's the textures right there.
Mhm.
See how it's lighter and darker? That's how we see the textures. It's that light and shadow that brings that stuff through. And depending on how strong we make it, so the difference here was not as much. I could have made that more, but this was good enough for my purposes. So I'm accentuating him a little bit more there. And then I did the same thing with his trousers. There's blue trousers. Made it a darker blue, and then brought the textures in from underneath. And I used a different technique here that I want to share with you. So to get more texture on the shirt and on the bottom, what I did is I made a black and white image from this picture down here. Okay? And then I masked the various parts. And I used the color dodge blend mode, color dodge, because I thought I got the best blend of the colors that way. And I took those textures and put them onto the short and onto his shorts, shirt and onto his shorts. Okay. And I clicked select subject. It's going to try and guess what the subject is, and it actually does a really good job.
Mhm.
Then I took a cut out of that. And how did I do that? I've got this here. If I hit down Command C for copy, and then Command V to paste, that'll put whatever's been selected on its own layer. So there it is. So if we look in here, we've got some places, like right here. See where the arm wasn't chosen as well? Little spots like here. So I put that image under a layer so I could see them. Then I can reduce the opacity of this layer. And I can come in here and start cutting out and fixing the places that I missed. So that's what that first color layer is for. So we did that. And then that's the cleanest one there. So let me go back to this one, and I'm going to bring my opacity back up. Now I'm going to pause here in this for a second, because one of the questions that came up that was submitted was, how do you put a texture and a different background in? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put in a texture. And the way I did that is I came in here and I used, as I brought in a texture. So let me do that for you right quick. So if I come up here to File, Open. So I have this background, or this texture file. So I'm going to take this texture file, and I'm going to bring it into the image that we're working on. And the way I do that is I click on it, click on the Move tool, bring it up to the image that we're looking on. I'm holding down my mouse key while I'm doing this, and still holding down the mouse key. I bring it into the picture, and there it is. So that's the texture that I had. I'm going to come up here to the Edit tool. I'm going to use Transform. I'm going to use Scale. And I'm going to bring the image in. Okay. So now I've got the image. I'm going to bring it
So
up.
when you hit scale, does that make it not go beyond where your lines are for the?
The scale makes that, let me undo that so you can see. The scale doesn't make it any size I want it to be. So let's go back here to, there it is. I'm on that layer. So if I come up here to Edit, Transform, Scale. Now that gives me this object, and I can move this object any way I want. See how I made it
Oh,
bigger?
so you can pull it beyond. Okay.
So you can take it and you can move it around. So let's say I like that part of the scale better right in there. And it'll stretch it to make that work. All right, so there, that's probably better. So there we have the image. I just hit enter, return, and that puts it in. So now I have that image. And I'm going to move it up here so it's closer to where we're working. So there it is. And all right, so I put a background in. Well, that's not making me very warm and fuzzy. So with these things, if I'm going to use it for the texture more than its colors, is what I will do is I will take the image and I will come to Image, Adjustments, and I will desaturate it. So what that does is makes it into a black and white, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can change how intense that is over the background that's behind it, how much I want to let that blue background come through. But I really would like to get some more three-dimensionality out of it. So I'll come up here to Filter. And I'll use Stylize. And for this, I tend to like to use Emboss. And in the Emboss, I can set how it tries to adapt it to making it a 3D image. See that in the background? So let's use that. Okay. So I've got him now sitting on this background. Then I can continue. I can play with the blend mode now. Come up here to normal. And if you just hold your cursor over the different blend modes, they'll give you a preview of what they're going to look like. It's pretty strong linear light. So that gives you a way to add a texture to your background. And you could put this on almost any kind of a background and change its opacity. Let's go back and change that. Let's go back up here to its opacity. Make it as subtle or as strong as you want it to be. And if that was a picture of a tree-lined boulevard behind it, that's what you get.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's how you add a background and a texture. So I'm just about ready to move on to the next part of this thing. But if I look at it, he's got he kind of looks like he's a boy from Florida because he's lily white down here. So what I tried to do here was to add some color to his legs and to his hands. Need to got those to match up a little bit. And part of that's because the lighting in the room where I shot the picture was so god awful. And I add some texture. So now I have Nathan cut out. He's on a neutral background. He's got the right color clothing on. It's got texture, so it has the illusion. Look, I even colored his socks to kind of match his pants.
I noticed that.
So now we're doing pretty well here. But that's probably not as far as we want to go. So file. So this is where we're going. So we wanted a background for it. And the background would be our living room. These construction lines here were for me to try and get it square so it looked right. And I just used a transform tool to get rid of that. So there they are. And so that's a smart object brought in from Lightroom. Here I've rasterized it. And the first thing, I noticed that the lights on the wreath were pretty crappy. So with the magic of Photoshop, I just cloned those lights and put them in. The next thing I did is I brought Nathan in. How do you think I did that?
Copied him.
There's Nathan. There's the blue background. There's Nathan with no other background, right? Click on the move tool, grab Nathan, hold the cursor down, bring it up to the one I'm working on, and bring it in, and there he is. And then what I have to do, I'll have to use the scale routine to make him the right size. So there he is, and he's in. Okay, the next thing is most of these kinds of inserts fail because we don't think about the physics of the world that we live in. And one of the problems with the world that we live in is that we have shadows. So I put shadows in and I painted them kind of roughly. See them here? And then to get the shadow being behind him, because that's where shadows belong. If you watch Peter Pan, you know the shadow belongs behind. I just dragged it down. So now the shadows are behind him. That's very subtle, but it's there. It helps add to the realism. It allows you to help adjust the curve. the illusion. So I used a curve to try and get the colors to match as if they'd been taken at the same time. And then I brightened his face. And then I tried to see on the bottom of his shirt how the light still came back in. So I used a darkening curve. Oh, I used a gradient, I'm sorry. I used a gradient on his legs. That's why it's not doing it, because it's the wrong one. So I just took a curve and brought it down, which helped bring the color to match. So that's the gradient and the curve, and this where I got that, so they matched closer. And then to help keep me straight is I tend to make stamp visible layers as a placeholder. So I don't have to worry about anything that happens down here. It just goes away. So the next problem is to try and get the legs a little bit darker, right? Same technique we used before. Then, because I'm going to use Nick's software again, because part of tonight's lesson plan was to show you what Nick's software does, is I made a stamp visible of everything I'd done before. And then from it, I ran the new version in their analog effects image and brought in a texture that I thought made the whole room feel more in keeping with what it was. And that's how I created a new background with a stamp person and gave him some feeling of reality. So that was how I got there. Thoughts, concerns?
Enlightening.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
hopefully.
that's, yeah.
Okay, so
Whether I could remember anything.
well, I'm recording this, so hopefully I'll get it cleaned up and you'll be able to go back over it again.
One of the things though, I really, it was helpful because once before I tried to recolor something. And that was one of the things, I had no texture in it. And so that's one, I try to make sure I get one thing that I know I can bring forward with it, and that's one that I will.
Okay, so let's talk about that
Great.
technique, because I invented that because I was racking my brain how I was going to show you this with his shirt looking so terrible. So one of the things is when you make your black and white, you can put a levels adjustment layer on it. And if you use the levels adjustment layer, you can make the blacks blacker and the whites whiter, which means you'll have more of that shadow line or texture line coming into your image. Yes?
Sorry, I missed that.
That's right, do it again.
Yeah, my sister called. I just wanted to tell her I'll call her back.
Sisters are important, you only get a few of them. So when you make your black and white conversion to get your textures, you could use curves, but it's probably easier to use the levels adjustment layer to make more of a difference between the whites and the darks, because you're going to use it just grabbing the darks in your blending modes. You go all the way down. You probably find that illumination is the one that'll give you the best keeping the color, but it'll bring in those textures back for you. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we can talk about Nick. We can talk about adding texture and dimension to buildings, or we can hit blind into Malin's picture, and I'll do whatever you guys want. You want me to see to work a picture blank that I haven't worked before? Or do you want to look at how we can add some dimension to buildings, like the one that Bob's got before? We could add a little bit more dimension to that shack at the end of the pier. Or
I'm
Malin,
curious.
do you want your picture work done? What do you want?
I'm curious about Nick.
okay, can we do that for a few minutes?
Sure.
Sure. Okay, so because Nick is involved in a long thing, I'm just going to give you a fast introduction to it. And then if you want, we can take our next sessions and maybe take one module at a time to see what it does.
Okay, so you're gonna cover an overall.
We'll do overall, and then I'm gonna hit SilverFX Pro because that to me is its
Yeah,
most,
that's the one I use the most. so.
that to me is my most favorite.
Yeah.
So if that works, you go to once you install Nick software, it can work as a standalone. It works in Lightroom Classic. I don't know if it still works in the Lightroom regular. I haven't had a chance to play with.
Lightroom regular does not support any plugins.
Okay, so it doesn't work there. So that's one of the downsides of it. It'll work in many of the other editors. So it's a pretty strong tool. It's been around for a long time. So if I come here, go to filters, I have two. So this is the one that was given away free when Google had it. And I'll share with you that I have now paid money for this thing 4 times. But I think it's worth it. So this is what we had before. And what DxO did is add a couple of new features to it and make the interfaces consistent across all the modules, and then updated a couple. So that's the new Nick Collection 6. So for example, it's analog effects. If we go back to the other one, it was Analog Effects Pro 2. See the change in the title? So they've got it back to what they think is a starting point. So let's just click on this one first. So Analog Effects. What it's going to do is take this stamped image that I've got, and it's going to bring it, is a program that tries to help simulate what things looked like before. So the format here is going to be all the same. You've got a way to compare back and forth through what you did and what you didn't have, spot removals. You can show it in various ways as you're talking. Let me move that out of the way. You can move back and forth. You can see a before and after happening over here. You've got detail extractor is probably one of its most powerful tools. See how we're bringing the detail back out of the rocks and things? So it's basically like a mid-tone contrast. I'm sorry, mid-tone contrasting. So it has a section to do lens work, and you can build these filters up one atop the other. So that's what the extractor is. Let's move that back a little bit. Turn it on or off. And then I've got my lens, and I can add or subtract its corrections to what it's doing with chromatic aberrations. And our programs have pretty well handled that. It can add bokeh. So it gives you a place to work on how big the bokeh is. Back in there. See how it's getting to try and grab it? Yeah, so it simulates it. And you have all of these various tools in here that allows you to do those, and you can create some favorites. So basically, it's a tool. So that's our focus point. Focus is going to drop off from there. Okay, so in focus, transition, out of focus. So you don't got to buy that fancy portrait lens. You just use this.
Yeah, that's nice.
Okay, so that's that one. So, and then when you're happy with it, you save it and then you apply it. And when you apply it, what it does is it takes the image.
You saved it, like you didn't click on save the preset. So
No,
I've had a couple black and whites that I save a preset, and what it does is then I name it, and I can go in and it has the same settings if I want to use them on
It does
another.
that too.
Okay.
It does that too. I was going to show it, but that's okay. Wherever we want to do it, not a problem. All right, so here's my stamp visible that we did before, and there it made the new one. So click this off, click on this, or the stamp visible again. Let's go up to filter, Nick, Color Effects Pro. So what this allows us to do is to change the colors in the image. So these are some adjustments that are already in there that came from Simplest, probably ones that I had done and saved, like what Donna was just talking about. So it's going to take these colors and it's going to change it. These are the color adjustments that it made to try and adjust the color around to what I thought I wanted. Click on that one. If I use that one, I have to get rid of the others. Okay. So then it came in with this one. And I can adjust the color to try and bring that into where I want it to be. So can you do this in Photoshop? Yes, you can. Can you do it as easily with as many complicated adjustments? You can, but it takes a lot longer to do it. So this allows you to pick color hues that you're working with. You can adjust the grain, which sometimes helps the clarity of things. So that's basically what this one does. It has a history. It has a history tab, so you can keep track of what it was you did. It has a series of different kinds of filters that pre-assumes what you think you might want to do. So that's what it thinks a natural rendition would be. If you go to films, you should be able to get various films that you can look at to try and simulate. So that's basically what this one does. You have to hit, if you hit, see down here it says Save Preset. If I click on that, it'll take the various settings that I've adjusted, it'll name it, and it'll put it in a file over here so I can bring it back, which is how we got the ones we had there. So if you found something that I really love what I did here, go in and you save the preset so you can use it again. Is that right?
Right.
And then if you hit apply, it sends it back there. So came in here, and that's where it is right there.
So when you used analog effects in this example that you worked before,
Yep.
what did you do in analog effects? What were you changing?
We changed, and this one we changed, as I recall, we did the bokeh, didn't we? And we added some bokeh in here and
Okay.
sharpened them up here and had the light. See how the shoes are dull down there? They were sharp
Okay.
here.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
we were just making a film simulation there.
Yep.
So let's turn this one off. I'll go back to settings for Nick. Filter. Nick. Define is a noise reduction program.
Okay.
So, and you can do it in the color, you can do it in the contrast. You can try and preserve various parts. So you have all those adjustments for noise. I hardly ever use this, so I'm going to cancel it.
You would either use Photoshop or Lightroom.
I would use Photoshop or DxO.
Topaz.
Yeah.
Well,
Or
this is
DxO.
DxO, isn't this? Isn't this DxO?
I have the DxO noise reduction,
Which is separate from this.
which is separate from this. Yeah, it's a separate thing.
Okay.
Although this has gotten better, just that I've got the other. It's just, you pick your poison.
Yeah. Okay.
Close without saving.
So
Okay.
you use DxO and not Topaz.
Most of the time, I use Topaz now. I use it for sharpening, and I use it for gigapixel. I tend to use the DxO as in their what they call, I think it's called Pure Raw, because it goes in and makes the lens adjustment for me and then reduces the noise in a superior kind of a way. And because I really, really like what their lens adjustment does, and we can, if we have time, we can look at that too to see what the difference is. I have just really like it, and I do it early in my workflow.
This last batch of pictures that I had from up at Mayaka,
Right.
I found that in experimenting, I found that Lightroom's noise reduction for my purposes, was doing as well or well enough compared to Topaz noise reduction.
And I think that's
So,
always
they're getting better.
issue is, is what's well enough.
Yeah.
I've been
And
using
I think Adobe improved it as well.
I do too.
I've been using Topaz Photo AI,
Yep.
Yeah.
and I like that. And sometimes I have to go in, it'll tell me which it prefers, but a lot of times I'll go in and do a little sharpening and just,
Yeah. I've been using that too.
Yeah, they all kind of work. It's I think the keep in mind is much like our cameras. Even the cheapest camera currently made is better than what Ansel Adams was using. And we just have to remember that
Yeah.
we're getting spoiled because things are so bloody good and so bloody fast.
Yeah.
That we're spoiled rotten. Okay, filters. Nick collection. HDR effects is a holdover from back in the age when we were making everything look like we were in some kind of psychedelic. The one thing I like about their HDR effects is it does a really great job of you bringing in a single image and it developing its own 2 steps down and 2 steps up for as many steps as you need to create an HDR image. I don't use HDR hardly at all, but that's what this one does, and it's gotten very good reviews. Same thing here, save a preset. We did perspective,
Yeah.
which to me is worth the price of it. It used to be a standalone program for them. Pre-sharpener. Okay, pre-sharpener is where it brings your raw image in and it does the sharpening that Adobe Camera Raw and Lightroom do for you now. And since those got good, I have not used pre-sharpening. I have used output sharpening, however. So output sharpening has the advantage as you're doing your sharpening to tell it how big you're going to make it, what you want to sharpen for. So if I want to do it for the display, which is where it's set at now, and then I can talk about how much sharper I think I want it to be. The structure is like contrast, so I can add that in. I can add it locally. I can change my focus point a little bit. And as I go through here, I can, if I get into the print module, and I'm not quite sure right now because I haven't set this new one up to do it. If I get into the printing module, I can tell it what size I'm going to print it and what viewing distance I intend my viewers to look at it from, and it will make the adjustments and the sharpening to meet those criteria. So here you can see what they've done for the sharpening is right up here. So you can kind of get a feeling for what it looks like.
yeah.
Good evening,
I usually
Gretchen.
like to use-
Welcome.
I like to use the little circle up
Yeah,
next to compare. And
Right.
so I can slide it back and forth and see what's going on. If you do that, then I can see what the difference is easily. Now grab the middle upper part of the slider. Yeah, slide it back and forth.
Yep.
So yeah, I can see exactly what I'm doing to the pictures. And whether I like it or not.
Well, that's always the trick, isn't it?
Yeah, instead of looking at the little picture.
Yeah. So, like I said, I haven't played with this since I got it, but you can get a feeling. Like if you look down there at the nutcrackers.
Yeah. And you can zoom in to where you want to do it. Right now it's on the red, so wherever my zoom is. Yeah,
There's some texture, isn't there?
yeah.
You can decide if you've got too much halo or not, and that's where this can
Yeah.
be. This is awfully big, so that's what that one does.
Okay.
Cancel.
That's handy.
And what else we can look at? back here to view.
When you're sharpening, you can select regions to sharpen, not just the whole thing.
Yeah, you can mask. It also comes in a layer, so you can mask things out if you
Yeah, I
want.
was amazed one time when I had a mask and it took it in and just did what I was working on.
Oh, no. So this is Silver Effects Pro, and notice that it kept the settings across. This is what we were zoomed into when I left. So there he is. And it comes with a bunch of presets over here of different films. And that's what it's simulating here. So if you know that you particularly like a certain film, it'll bring in the adjustments for that film. So right now there's 64 in there. So they have an anniversary set here, some new stuff. They've got the vintage, so there's a dozen vintage. It's film noir. Maybe a little dark for my taste right now. So this is a yellow cast.
DPI.
And
He looks like a UPS driver.
doesn't it? So it's got some neat things here as starting points. And you also have your collection, the classic ones, which is probably where I'll go to begin with the most.
Yeah, I like the high, if you do high structure smooth on some of them, I like that one. There's a couple that I like.
So let's get something here I can deal with. Yes. I want to turn that off. So we've got this one in. So this is picking the presets. And down here are ones that your history again. The last ones you used, ones that you've brought in from somebody else. You can share this presets back and forth to get them off the web. So you come back in here on this other side and you can begin to look at how the image is being done and make your own adjustments. So I can add brightness to it. I can make it darker. I can do that in various places. I can adjust just the shadows if I want to. Add more contrast. Amplify the whites. So you have all of these controls over here to help you do that. And you can see there's just a lot of controls over here. When you get down, it has a very good grain. If you know, I've given you a grain preset so you can put it on your pictures, but it'll take your grain in and you can set them to what you want them to be. You can put grain in or out. These simulate what would happen if you would have put that filter on the front of your camera before you took the black and white picture. So that's what these are. Okay. So that's what that set does for you. Film grain down here. You can add to its intensity and its size, which simulates things quite nicely.
Okay, so you clicked on something because you see the lines that are showing. Is that
Yeah,
up at the top that you clicked that way at the top?
That's up in here.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand are those in the
Right.
history.
Well, what it's trying to do is let's see, it's supposed to be showing me where the different zones are. But I gave you so you see this is zone 3. See the lines right in here?
Yeah,
Okay, so that's where zone 3 is. And so all this I've got all the others on, so it's showing me all of them. But if I just wanted, let's say I just wanted to see zone 7. So there it is. And zone 7, see zone 7's line is in here and in here. I don't use this much anymore because I'm giving you another preset that I think is more helpful. But that's what that's for.
okay.
Okay?
And then if you look at the, like where it has RGB, if I go on R, that's like the red channel and I'm just adjusting anything that's in red.
Yeah. That's the idea.
Okay.
So this is your luminous right here. I don't know if it's a dead pixel or if it's just lighting up, but that's what those tools do. Okay, so cancel that. And once again, you can save your presets. And the last one in the group is Viveza. And with the same kind of a format, you've got your presets on this side, you've got your adjustments on this side. So that's its neutral. It's a nice way to make night. And it's just giving you a whole lot of adjustments, changing your color pattern. And Viveza has to do with color. You can add the strength of the red. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Are these different, more manageable or usable than like the presets in Lightroom?
There's more of them, and it gives you the ability to have them in a common place to work. Many of the presets, some of the presets in Lightroom will work in both versions of it. I have found the presets oftentimes to be a little clumsy because you have more things you can deal with here.
Okay.
I haven't shown it to you, and we'll do in one of the classes. They have what they call a something point technology where you can change the impact of add a control point here. So there's a control point. So all of these things over here, I can adjust here. So, for example, that's the luminance. I can make it bigger. So let's take the illumination and move it down. See, look at the fireplace in the back. You see it working, changing back in there?
Yeah.
All right, so now yeah, we're seeing a lot of it basically in there. So that's bringing that across. So brightness, brighter. Contrast, more contrast, less contrast, less contrast, contrast. So you have all of these various things now that you can control. And if you save those in a preset, you can't do that in Lightroom.
Okay.
At least you can't do it easily because this will bring this stuff in, and then you can simply move your control points. You can take this control point, once you've got it doing what you want it to do, and you can duplicate it, which is so you can duplicate it. You can put new ones in and have them doing various things all around the picture and having them interact. I can take one and then like adjust it for his mid-range and then just march up his body with him. So this gives you an incredible amount of control, and we'll spend another time talking about how these work.
Can you make it into like an oval and change the shape kind of?
I don't know if they've added that to it yet or not. That's part of my learning curve. So, all right. So I'm going to, and once again, if I apply it, it's going to take that set of controls and it's going to bring it and put it on its own layer. So there's what we do with the Viveza. So I've got all these different effects and I can, play with them as I want, mask them, move them back and forth in that stack. And so I have found it to be useful.
If you double click on those layers, you get back into the tool. Is that right?
No, I don't think. If I wanted to do that, I should have made this layer a smart average first. So let me show you that. I'm on this layer here. I'm sorry, I right clicked on it just then to get it. Convert to a smart object. So I did it there. I could have done that up here with filters. I could have done it at that point. So now it's a smart object. Click here, Click on filters. Let's go back to Nick Collection. Let's go back to Analog Effects Pro.
Yeah, one of the things I found, like with Silver Effects Pro, if I went out and went back in, it takes me back to the beginning. So that's why now, if I really like something, I've been trying to save it
Yeah.
occasionally, even if I delete it after, as one of those presets. So if I wanted to change the picture and I went back in, I know where I was before. And if I can compare a couple things.
All right.
Oh,
So this,
yeah. Go ahead.
so
And
this
I
is
also, when I label what I did, so like on, I did have a cheat sheet here, like I would put for Silver Effects, if I used more silver, which is 043, I will put that, which of those presets that I used on a picture.
You put it where?
I relabel. So instead of just having Nick Silver Effects, I will put the number of which preset I used.
Yeah.
all right. So this, and that's so you just double click on the name here and you can type it
Right.
whatever you want it to be. So here's where we made it a small filter, and this is where the Nix Analog Effects Pro. I could have done each of those inside this smart filter and had them all locked up down here that I could have turned and gone back to. And there, that brought us right back.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So, a
So if
powerful
it's a smart
plugin.
object, I can go back to it,
I'm
correct?
sorry.
If it's a smart object, then I can just click back on and go back into
Yep.
it. Is that correct?
That's what you can do.
And you'll have
And you know it's a smart
settings.
object because it's got this little symbol here in the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
We try. Okay, so
Now, the ones that are above there that are not smart objects, those apply to whatever's below them.
they apply just to themselves. I mean, I could turn all the rest of this off. Let's just turn all this off.
But what I'm saying is,
No, they're on a layer by themselves. I mean, that
I
layer.
understand that, but what do they apply to?
We took the stamp
they
visible
create-
here.
They create a new layer. Okay,
They
gotcha.
created a new layer.
Yeah. So
Right
they're not a filter. They're
It's not a filter. If
It's
I
a
want
new
it to be a
image.
filter, I've got to do it this way.
Yeah.
If I just want to apply the plugin this way, it's a layer by itself, and
Yep.
nothing else is on.
Gotcha.
You see, it's everything's there, and it doesn't matter what I do down here.
Yep.
So
Okay.
now I could take this and I could mask it. So if I click on this layer here and I hit the mask, then I can, if I make it black, remember that was Command or Control, the letter I.
Invert.
So I inverted it. So now on this layer here, I want to paint with white. There we go, white. And I'm going to make my brush bigger. So I'm going to hit the right bracket bar. That's the one that's next to the / on your keyboard. And I'm going to paint this in here, and then it'll then show up whatever's underneath. See it? So that's the difference between these two that we did right there, that cover of those rocks. And because it's a mask, if I decided that I liked those rocks, but I liked what they did to Nathan better, then that's how I would do it.